There's one thing I don't like about it, and we'll get into that. But the VB-MAPP was developed by BCBA, which is one reason that I really like it. Go ahead and go to the next screen. But it really focuses on B.F. Skinner's functional verbal behavior. Okay, VB-MAPP stands for Verbal Behavior Milestones. I don't know what milestones is in capitalized, but everything else is. So Verbal Behavior Milestones Assessment and Placement Program. So instead of saying bad every time, we just say VB-MAPP. This was developed by a guy named Mark Sumberg in the applied behavior analyst field. He is the verbal behavior guru. I've met him a couple times. Very nice guy. His wife is also a BCBA and big into verbal behavior. They write books together now. But almost every workshop, lecture, class I've ever had from him is about verbal behavior. Like that is his cream and butter. Corn, potatoes, and sweet beets. Wait, no, it's not sweet beets. Sugar beets. That's his stuff. He loves it, okay? So, real quick story. There's this guy named James Partington who was best friends with Mark Sumberg. They developed this awesome assessment called the ABLES, which we're going to talk about next. Something happened. I don't know what. No one really wants to talk about it, so I can't get a real answer. They broke up. They weren't friends anymore. So Sumberg says, oh, I don't get my royalties from ABLES anymore, and developed the VB-MAPP. That's pretty much what we have here, okay? It really focuses on verbal behavior and learning acquisition, okay? How is the child learning? What's keeping the child from learning? It doesn't go into other things like Divineland does, like community skills, big overarching things. There's 170 milestones. There's a lot, okay? Within 16 skills area. Here's the part that I don't like. This is really the only thing I don't like about the VB-MAPP. 4 years old, that's all it normalizes up to. So if your skill set is more than 4, you really shouldn't use the VB-MAPP. That's the greatest downfall. For kids 0 to 4, it's perfect. I wish, and I hope, I don't know, I have any inclination that he'll ever do this, but I wish he would expand this quite a bit. Whether he does or not, I don't know. He's making enough money off of this, so why? But that's the hard part. So if you're working with a 6, 7, 12, 15-year-old, VB-MAPP is not for you. If you have some kids 0 to 4, it's great. So know that and keep that in mind. The ABLES, which we're going to be talking about, is 0 to 7. And the AFOLs, thank goodness they all sound alike, is 2 plus.
So is that 4 years chronological or
developmental? Mark Sumberg on some videos online goes into that. If your kid is 7, but he's functioning at the 4 years, then you can run this. Okay. So that's where the pilot can come into place. You're like, oh, my kids are all like 1 and 2 functionally. I can run the VB-MAPP if you have time and the ability to. Okay, so that's one way you can assess that. Is whether or not. Okay, next slide. Again, the biggest thing, hence the name verbal behavior milestones, is in fact it analyzes language delays that may be impacting learning. Verbal behavior is one of the core aspects of our society. When a Skinnerian, an applied behavior analyst, a BCBA, whatever you want to call us, talks about verbal behavior, we're not just talking about the sound coming out of my mouth. Okay? This is verbal behavior. Any type of communication with the intent to convey something is verbal behavior. As behavior analysts, we look at verbal behavior differently than an SLP. We have a lot of similarity and crossovers. However, we also butt heads on some themes. Not that IEPs ever get ugly when a BCBA and an SLP are there. But we look at it very functionally. So this is just a brief overview. For example, when I'm teaching a kid's language, please and thank you are the absolute last things I ever teach. And that really ticks some people off sometimes. But it's not functional. If I can get one word out of a kid, I don't want it to be please or thank you because I have no idea what he wants. Well, you've all seen the cute little toddler that walks over the fridge. And you're like, Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? And then just, right? We have no idea.
Right, when they're doing it at 15. I have one that's 15 and that's all she does. And she does whatever she wants.
Right.
Because that's all she says is please. That's the respectful thing to
It's
do.
not functional. So if I'm going to teach them functional verbal behavior, I'm going to teach them to say water or sign milk because they get something specific. Please is just a social norm, and it's very good to use. I'm not trying to say don't be polite, but if I can only get one word out of my kid, I need it to be functional. If I can only get 2 words out of my kid, it's not going to be milk, please. It's going to be chocolate milk. Because the kid wants chocolate milk, not white milk. Right? It adds more function to it. So that's what Sundberg bases his assessment off of. We start with requests. We call them MANs. Here's something funky about applied behavior analysis. We needed to be so cool, we renamed everything. We have this cool language. So we have MANs, tags, intraverbals, and autoclitics. That's language. So in other words, we ask for things, we label things, we answer questions, and we add different qualifiers to it. But we have to call them fun, weird names. No one knows what we're talking about, so you have to be part of the exclusive club in order to understand what we're doing. But we're looking at verbal behavior functionally, not just language, not just orally, not just sound-wise. This could be textual. Okay, so when you're assessing your student, your kiddo, your peanut on this, it's not just whether they can say it orally. If they can sign it, it's 100. It's independent. The topography, in other words, the way it looks, is irrelevant in functional verbal behavior. It could be through picture exchange. It could be through typing on an iPad. It could be through sign language. Whatever means of communication it would be. I worked with a young adult who had the coolest contraption. You've probably all seen it. They can move the mouse with their head and type stuff. That's totally functional because he can communicate with me. He can't say a lick, but he can talk to me. So that's the key part here. Any topography. If in one domain he can or she can vocalize it, wonderful. But in the other domain they can sign it, wonderful. That's okay. It's all still 100. It's all still independent. Right? Topography doesn't matter. Functionality matters. Okay. Is everyone clear on that? Beat that dead horse? Has anyone read the new PETA guides to idioms in the English language? Oh, Google it during break. Beating a dead horse. You can't. The one I remember the most, you can't kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You can't feed 2 birds with 1 can, or something like that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are the domains, the milestones, right? This is what we're going to be measuring with questions within each one of these. MANs, so those are requests. So think of demand, command. Exactly. Skinner liked the word man. He explains why he picked that word in one of his books. I didn't understand. Tact. Okay. Tact, think of contact. So for example, if I say, I hear a lawnmower, I'm bringing you into contact with my environment. It's labeling things, okay? I love this song, Everything is Awesome. I just brought you in contact with my environment. My kids love that movie. And the Lego Batman movie, oh my gosh, it's the most funny Batman movie ever. Did you guys hear the new Batman movie? No. Sorry, side note.
Robert Pattinson.
Oh! Robert Pattinson. Diggory. Worst Batman ever. I don't even have to watch it. We're getting worse to worse to worse to worse. Holy crap. Sorry, I just had to throw that out. It's really made me sick inside. Can you imagine him with the Batman voice? Like, it's just going to be awful. Just did that. Intraverbals are answering questions, conversing back and forth. Intra-verbal language between 2 people. Echoics are repeating back sounds, echoing back sounds. Motor imitation. Textual behaviors, so reading. This is where some of the other aspects of verbal behavior are measured. Transcription, spelling. Listener responding, so this is receptive language. Listener responding by feature, function, and class. I love this part of it because it's not just, can you go find a toy? We're getting really specific. Can you go get the red toy with the wheels? Can you go get a piece of clothing? Because a lot of our kids with disabilities, whether it's ED, autism, ADHD, Downs, whatever, feature, function, class is really hard for them. Because you're taking something and you now have to split it up into 5 different things, and it was hard enough for them to learn that one thing. So, very important there. Visual perception matched to sample, matching 2D samples, 3D samples, things along those lines. Independent play, social behavior, social play, spontaneous vocal behavior, classroom routines, group skills, linguistic structure, and math. Okay? Math's part of verbal behavior? Absolutely. Okay? So all of this goes into learning and engaging in verbal behavior. You see a big difference between this and the Vineland? The Vineland's all-encompassing, total child. This, language. Right? It's good and bad. When, and I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do this. You have to balance your time. I would run both when I was working with Medicaid. Okay? I run the VB-MAPP and the Vineland, and sometimes the third one, because they give me a holistic view or a more broad view of the child. Okay, next slide. Okay, so there's some different ways to do this. You can interview the parent or caregiver, similar to the way you're going to be doing the Vineland. And that's why we're going to be doing a role play at the end of today, because all of these can include an interview component. So we're not going to focus specifically on how to interview the Vineland, how to interview the VB-MAPP, how to interview the ABLES. You can generalize the skill set to all of them, because it's similar. The questions are different, but the way you do it is similar. Or if you have a lot of time, none of us do, you can do some direct observation, watch the kid in the classroom, the community, or the home, or you can actually probe every question. Sundberg talks about in some of his lectures, that would be the ideal way. I mean, you would get true baseline data, accurate data. You also need about 6 to 8 hours and a lot of toys and resources. Most of them you can find in the preschool classroom, which is fantastic, but you have to carry around a box with you. They sell kits for like $500 of every toy and tool you will need to run the VB-MAPP. They're awesome, it's great, it's just time intensive. That's the hard part. So what I, in my practice, would do, and I will say, in one of the lectures I listened to from Dr. Sundberg, he did say this is okay. So again, I'm not trying to say figure out how to do this most unethical manner possible. This is still within the bounds of even Dr. Sundberg, who realizes the clinical practice. I interview the parents, and then the things they don't know, because a lot of times, we go back one slide, they don't know this part at all, or very little. I'd go probe that or go observe that. So the things they didn't know, I would make a note and go probe it or observe it in the natural environment. That's at least how I ran it, and the clinicians I worked with ran it as well. Each question is going to be scored either a 0 for can't do it all, half for semi-independence, needs prompts, or does it sometimes, and 1 meaning full independence. Again, this is a can do or does do kind of question. Just because they can do it doesn't mean they do it. So for example, I can do a flip. I don't do flips. The times I have done flips have been more on accidents, but on a regular basis I couldn't do it. Okay? So see the difference there? I can play the guitar, I don't play the guitar. I can play one song on both the guitar and then another song on the piano. I'm not a piano player. You see the difference there? So yeah, if someone says, hey Joe, can you go play a song on the piano? I can play Unchained Melody on the piano. My friend and I, we learned it in high school so we could try to woo the ladies. It didn't work at all, but I still have it memorized. But I don't do it. So it wouldn't be mastered. I would maybe be a half when it comes to piano playing with one song. And I can finger pick the top line of any song. Okay, so we need to make sure that our parents, as we're interviewing them, same thing with the violin, they're giving us answers of what they do, not what they can do. And so if you see some hesitancy, if you watch their body language, you can change it. Or not change it, but you can probe more into whether the child does do it. And I ask the same kind of questions. Do they do it with grandma? Do they do it at school? Do they do it at church? Do they do it in the playground? And if any of those are no, I'm not going to put a 1. Because there needs to be some generalization. I know it's an emerging skill, but it's not a fully independent skill yet. I can talk anywhere I go. It's an independent skill. Okay? Stop this section once you hit three ones. Oh, sorry, if the child misses 3 skills in a row. So again, ceiling basal, 3 ones are your basal, but you don't have to keep going within that section if you hit 0, 0, 0. Same thing with the violin, right? The violin was 4. The VB-MAPP is 3. So you don't have to ask all 177 questions. And when we get to the ABLES, which has over 500 questions, it's a lifesaver. So again, this could take 30 minutes to an hour, or it could take a couple hours depending upon the skill set of your child. There's 3 different levels within the VB-MAPP. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3. They progress through the levels, and we'll talk about those next, maybe. Okay, so this is what the scoring guide looks like. You'll see here that this VB-MAPP, this was done digitally online. How many of you are planning or looking at doing the VB-MAPP? Uno mas.
Come on.
Stress. Okay, I love the VB-MAPP again. It's great for the 0 to 4s. When you're working with other funding sources, and I don't know how Idaho Medicaid is going to do this. If it's just a one-time thing, it sounds kind of like that way if you do the VB-MAPP. We had to run it every 6 months, and so these different colors are the progression of this student's skills, which is kind of fun to see visually. And I would show this to the parents and to the kid as well. Like, look how good you're doing. Oh gosh, we almost got full level 1 all completed, and we're halfway up level 2. Super exciting. But what do you see here with level 3? Right. Very spotty. What's his biggest strength? I don't know if you can read that, which is ironic because that's reading. This is strength. So I can see a strength there, right? It's very visual. It doesn't give me an adaptive age like a violin does. It just shows me skills. So if it's mastered, it's color. So I know I can really play upon independent play, reading skills, and some math as his strengths. Okay? I know that his biggest deficits are social, which is very interesting. You see 2 empty spaces here and only a little bit here. And then feature function class and matching the sample are also his other strengths. So we got some visual performance going on. This and the ABLES and the AFLs are very visual. They're not numbers. They're not statistical. They're visual. If you do this on the app, which to me was the easiest, I just have an iPad and there's a VB-MAPP app. See, that's 10 times fast. It grabs it. It does this all for you. You just ask the question, you probe it, you observe it, however you want to do it. You mark 0, half, or 1, and then at the end it shows this to you. And it's really nice and easy. You can do it on a laptop as well on the internet side, and it prints this out for you. Okay.
The one that we have, that we bought, it also gives like ideas too.
That's the best thing about the VB-MAPP. So, we talked the violin gives you some ideas. This is a curriculum. Sundberg developed this as a curriculum. Sorry, I got a drink. So yeah, you can teach to this. I said the violin, don't teach to the violin. It's not Common Core. It's not the end-all test. This is. Sundberg and then Partington with the ABLES developed these to be a curriculum help for IEPs, which is awesome. So if you're stuck, maybe run a VB-MAPP and it gives you the progression because these build upon themselves. So here, this is the MAND. Sorry, this is so fuzzy. This is your foundation of manding, and then this needs to build upon that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It builds upon itself until up at the top you've generalized and mastered the skill set. So it's effective. So yeah, teach with it. Teach to it. It's okay to. Yes, it was developed to be that way. Okay. So with the VB-MAPP has 177 questions, or 177 questions, but then there's 3 other assessments that are included in the VB-MAPP, and this is one of the reasons I love the VB-MAPP, because we just measured all those domains, but we're going to hardcore measure echoics, transitions, and barriers. Okay, so we're going to talk about those 3. And these just give you even more detailed data to make best decisions for your kids. So you're seeing the skill development on the first part of the assessment. Now these are, why is this individual not learning? Where's their barriers? How come they're not accessing learning from the natural environment? This will lay it all out for you. Okay, so the echoics, this was developed by the SLP, speech language pathologists. Any SLPs in the room? Any aspiring SLPs in the room? Okay, cool. You don't have to be an SLP. It's funny, the manual highlights that and reiterates that a couple times. I can't remember the name of the lady who developed this. Thank you. Say it loud. Eshelman.
Barbara.
But they say it is best for an SLP, but you don't have to be it. So what you want to do is it gives you, I think, about 30 sounds that you say and try to get the child to repeat. And there are consonant vowel sounds, there are vowel sounds, there are vowel consonant sounds. You're trying to get different echoics going on. So with teaching language, echoics is the foundation, right? If a child can't repeat back a sound they hear, they're probably not going to talk anytime soon. But remember, topography doesn't matter. So if a child can't sign back, I don't know what I just spelled there, then they can't sign either. If a child can't repeat back with a picture, so you hand a picture, they hand a picture, that would be an echoic in a picture exchange. They can't do that. They can't communicate with picture exchange. So whatever the topography may be, go with it. So if the child's already communicating sign, do a sign. I don't know how you say ooh in sign language, but YouTube does. And I looked at it many times, and they even have some guides on YouTube on the echoics assessment, the ESA, on YouTube as well that you can watch. But it doesn't all have to be vocal, okay? It can be whatever topography the child is already learning at. And at some point, you as a clinician are going to have that conversation with the caregiver, because if you're trying to do picture exchange and sign language and vocal verbal behavior, you're not going to acquire anything. And that's sometimes a really hard conversation, because all of our caregivers want their child to be vocal. And I get it, but the reality is not all of them are going to be. So this is a great chance to start talking about that with parents, but also start probing where their echoic strengths are. If will you go back a slide? If their motor skills, or is it fine motor skills? I can't read this. Even this close. Go back. It's okay. Aren't strong, then sign language may not be the best choice, because there's some sign language that have to have some very fine motor skills, very fine motor skills in order to do it. You may need to go to picture exchange. So this may be a time to probe that. Typically, if my kids are between 7 and 10, we're still not making any progress vocally, I'm really going to have a conversation with the parent about, we really need some language going on. Maybe we really need to just focus on sign language. We can still try to teach vocal, but we're going to intensely focus more on sign or picture exchange or whatever medium it is we as a team decide upon. But this is a great tool to be able to decide upon that through data versus emotions. And always give your parents time to process big questions like this. Don't make them decide on it right then in front of you. Give them a week or two, because their whole perspective of the future for their child is about to change. So just kind of plug in there. Give up to 3 childs for every echoic in there, and either mark a 0, half, or 1, okay, on that. And this will show their echoic strength, which will help you understand where to start. Maybe you see that on the vowels, they echo back really well. But on the glottal stop consonants, like the sounds back there, they don't. Well, you know where to start. And I would also collaborate with an SLP because as a behavior analyst, I didn't study the muscle development of the back of the throat or the ways to teach formation of sounds, but SLPs do. And so this is where I would collaborate with them. It's like, hey, I'm trying to teach a G sound. How do I teach a G sound? Because I know how to make it, but how do I help them form their tongue right and they shape their mouth right, all that. That's where SLP's strengths are, okay? But that's what you're analyzing with the echoics is where are the echoics stopping? What are the barriers to echoics? Is it all sounds, is it consonants, is it vowels, is it blends? Sh is a really hard sound for a lot of our kids, or th is really hard, and so some of these blends is maybe where you want to start.
What if it's laziness?
Are you like selective mutism laziness or just pure motivational laziness?
Well, like my 2.5-year-old, she wasn't speaking, so we took her in, found out she had like thick stuff in her ear, so she wasn't hearing.
Okay.
So we're starting to do speech stuff.
Cool.
And we're trying to do the echoic stuff. And we'll ask her questions. She's like, why? Hey, say milk. Why?
Yeah.
So she says enough words that she's like,
Sure it is.
you just said what you wanted to say. Why do I need to say it?
She's gonna be more fun when she's a teenager. Okay, so this is where Skinnerian behavior, verbal behavior can play a part in this. And this is where us and the SLPs differ a lot, and I'm not gonna say who's right or wrong, but no, SLPs, I love working with SLPs a ton. I work with a lot with SLPs and OTs, and we each bring different perspectives into it. Okay, so I was working with the kid. I'm just going to tell an example to kind of illustrate the principle, right? When I was running the EESA, no sounds, 0 sounds at all. Mom said he could say like 10 sounds. I got nothing, 0. Not even a babble, and this kid was 3.5. He was the lowest functioning kid I've ever worked with. It took almost 2.5 years to really get 3 words going. So this is what we did. Every once in a while, he would make a sound. And I had chicken, which was his favorite meat, favorite meal, favorite food, by my side at all time during session. And anytime he made a sound, I popped a chicken into his mouth super quick. Now, I told Mom, don't feed him for like an hour or 2 before sessions because I need him a little hungry. I need him motivated for some food. So we're using primary reinforcers here, which you don't have to with all kids, right? But that was the way I started getting a sound, is I increased his motivating operation, his MO, in order to want something. And I started pairing that with the chicken. And at first, it was just, and that meant chicken to us, and that meant chicken to his mom. And over the end of that first year, he would walk over the fridge, we knew we wanted chicken, all right, we got something going here. So you gotta look at, the speech is functional. Right now, it's not functional to her. So yeah, she doesn't care about labeling a can of milk because you just said what it was. So how do you make it functional for her? So if I'm teaching echoics, I'm gonna do an echoic to man transfer from the get-go because it makes it functional. So once we started getting him to say pretty regularly for the chicken, then what I would do is, again, having him hungry, have a piece of chicken, and right before he would say So I'm getting some stimulus and instructional control over my sound, so he's repeating it after me. And then I'm only giving him the chicken when he says it after me. If he beats me to it, which he did a lot of the times, then I wouldn't give him the chicken. So see, I was trying to get some echoics going on, not just mans. So that's what I would do. If you want her to ask and for something, get something she wants that you can control and reinforce with. That's the functional part. Again, I'm not trying to say SLPs are wrong, it's just different ideologies, different theoretical perspectives. But that's why I like functional communication, because it has innate motivation into it. If I was going to just for straight echoics with this kid, we'd still be working with him on echoics. There's no way. But I went with mans, and then a man to echoic transfer, and then back from echoic to man transfer. It was really complicated, but it's working with him. So find something your kid wants, put it up on a high shelf so they can see it all the time, and she'll ask for it if she really wants it. iPad is, at least for my kids, the way that I really got Mans going. And I've worked with a lot of kids to get the I sound and the iPod, the iPad, and the iPad, and really worked on that because they wanted it. And I could take it away and give it to them back and forth a lot, and they could play their games and get reinforced by it without having to give them edibles and things like that, natural reinforcers. And then after sessions, Mom would put the iPad away so they could only get it if they would ask for it. Answer your question? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's kind of the ESA. Really great tool. Again, it's separate from that initial assessment that you looked at in the VB-MAPP with those scores. So it's a little lengthy, right? That's one hard part about the VB-MAPP. But you see how much good information is given. Next one. Oh, it did move. Sorry. 24 factors measured.
I keep giving you a reinforcer back.
I was only looking at the top.
I was
like,
too.
Focus on the areas that are high. It's really helping you to measure where the echoics are not happening. This is the barriers. It's really helping you to measure why learning's not happening. So this is measuring why the individual is not accessing learning in natural environments with the 24 questions in there. Okay. I love this part of the VB-MAPP. It's fantastic. With the Vineland, you have to deduct barriers. With the VB-MAPP, it spells it out for you. So it's going to ask you questions, transition, like does the child transition? Can the child learn in groups? Can the child learn independently? How many trials does it take for the child to learn something? All sorts of kind of questions like that to be able to really help you focus on helping the child to learn. So you're not just teaching to the skill, you're teaching to the deficit of learning. Does that make sense? That's why the VB-MAPP rocks, because it gives you that information. Because we can't teach all of our clients every skill they need to learn to be successful. It would take years. Shoot, I'm still learning those things, right? All of us in this room are learning skills on how to be successful in life. I don't need a BCBA or an interventionist in my life my whole life. That would be wrong, unethical, very intrusive. We need to get out of their lives as quick as they can, as we can, so they can live a normal life, quote unquote normal life. So I need to teach them how to access that learning. So I want you to think all about something you've learned recently, whether it's a skill, whether it's knowledge, something, anything. Has anyone learned a new skill lately? What have you learned? Can I put you on a spot?
Jumping a four-wheeler more than 5 feet.
Nice! That's awesome.
Without crashing it.
That's the key part, right?
Without crashing.
Okay, so how are you learning that?
Well, I started really slow.
Okay.
Just going over the bumps, and then got faster. Then you had to learn not to let off the gas when you hit the hill.
Which is
It's
counterintuitive.
It's painful, has a painful lesson to it. It was a faster learning curve once you start jumping, and it gets more painful.
So you're doing it. You're practicing it. How many times have you tried so far?
A lot.
100, 200, 300?
50.
50? All right. So what you're telling me is within 50 trials, you're learning a new skill. All right. Isn't that what we want our kids to do?
Right.
The same concept for learning how to jump a four-wheeler goes with learning math, learning science, learning socialization, all of those things. Thank you for sharing, and best of luck to you. I expect to see world records soon.
Got some videos.
Now, what skills did she, and this is a group question, not just for her, what skills does she have to have in order to access learning that way?
Eye-hand coordination.
Eye-hand coordination, very good.
Large motor.
Following directions, receptive skills, large motor or gross motor skills. Probably some imitation. You probably watched people do it.
She needs a four-wheeler.
She needs a four-wheeler, so she has to have skills that will allow her to purchase a four-wheeler.
You have to have a mechanic in the shop to fix the
You,
four-wheeler over
so
and over.
socialization
Yes.
to be able to get your four-wheeler fixed.
Self-confidence.
Self-confidence. Oh, what? Yes. Self-management. self-observation, self-confidence, all these things. Great.
Lack of mortality.
How many of you seen the show Solo, the movie Solo? The guy who climbed El Cap in Yosemite? It's like fear, the amygdala is like very much smaller than all of ours. He has no fear of death. Like physiologically, his brain doesn't process fear. That's why he free climbed El Cap. Which, if you've never seen El Cap, go ahead and Google it. It's just a sheer cliff. It's right. I've only seen it on my screensaver on Apple, but I have the goal to go there someday, and it is beautiful on that page. Okay, so if I were creating a treatment plan for her, I would have taken all these skills and taught her those skills, not how to jump a four-wheeler. Right? I could have just made a plan. How to jump a four-wheeler. We never got approved. But I could have said, your goal, what's your name? Sorry, I should have asked that. Tani. Tani will independently jump a four-wheeler in 80% of opportunities across 3 consecutive sessions. I could have written that in there, just like that, right? But then I'm teaching to the skill, not to the learning opportunity. Because I want Tani to now know how to do that on a dirt bike. But I don't need a program for that, or a snowmobile, or a monster truck. I don't know. But I also want her to learn how to fish. And I want to learn how to jump a horse 5 feet. When you do that, let me know. I was on a horse once, and we were trying to train him how to go over a river. And he decided to jump over the river instead with me on him. And that was one of the most exciting, scary things I've ever done in my life. But I want to teach to allow her to learn from that. Same thing with my kids. I'm not teaching that they can know algebra because I'm not an algebra teacher. I hate math. But I can teach them core skills that allow them to access the algebra teacher and the curriculum to be successful. Then I can get out of their life because they're learning from the natural environment. Okay? Next. This is the barriers assessment. Okay? This slide is stolen. Let me just throw that out there. I did not create this slide. This is a screenshot because it was easier to screenshot it than recreate it. Okay? I got this from a presentation that I went to once on a VB-MAPP. Instead of using their whole PowerPoint, they just picked core pieces from. So a score of 1 suggests that an occasional problem exists and should be monitored. Okay, so you're probably about a 1 when jumping. Most of the time you do it, but not a huge.
I'm a 0.5.
Okay. Score of 2. So 1's the best, right? 1 is where you want to be. This is an inverse scale. 4 is bad. You see, 4 is a severe problem that needs intervention analysis on it. Okay. That's where maybe stereotypy may be a barrier to learning because they're so engaged with, I know we all try it, the different little things that our kids do, or watching the wheels drive by, or whatever the stereotypy may be, that may be impeding them, and then we need to intervene. Or maybe they are engaging in stereotypy. I can pick out 3 of you in this room that are right now. We all do it. We just do it functionally. So we're at a 1 on it. We can still learn. In fact, sometimes stereotypy helps me learn. I bounce my leg. I didn't realize it until I got married, but it helps me concentrate. I don't know, it just does. So if someone was trying to get it away from me completely, I wouldn't function as well, I guess. 2 is there's a moderate problem, may need some intervention. 3 is it's moderate or persistent problem and probably will need some intervention. Of course, 4 is the worst. So as you're looking at these barriers, you're going to target all the 4s, or if there's no 4s, all the 3s. You're going to target all the high areas because it's going to allow them to access more learning and more social opportunities. I keep bringing up social opportunities because that's informal learning. We learn from each other all the time. I'm learning from you, watching your body language. I'm monitoring my own behavior based upon your body language. When I start seeing this, I know that everyone's in agreement with what I'm saying. Right. No, but I know I need to change things up a little bit. Or if everyone's on their phones and I'm like, all right, I'm not as interesting as what's going on Insta, I want to pull mine out. No, but we all monitor and change our behaviors according to others, and we need to teach our kids to do that so they can access informal learning outside of formal school. And that's what the barriers helps us to be able to identify. So With the VB-MAPP, so far I'm able to program for skills, utilize the curriculum on the first assessment. I'm able to see some barriers on language development through the EESA, and now I'm able to see general barriers to all education and learning. See how effective this tool is? It's awesome. That's why I love the VB-MAPP, because it's taking the approach that we're teaching them to learn, not just teaching them every skill possible. All right, next slide. Transitions. Okay, now we're going to measure their strengths. 18 factors are measured, and we're going to be scoring them from 0 to 5 on what they do well that helps them access education. So we're going to take the scores from the VB-MAPP. It's kind of funny, it uses its own scores to score itself, but it works. But you're going to take the scores from the first assessment and the EESA, and it goes into transitions. It's going to show you their learning patterns. Self-help, spontaneity, self-directions. High scores show learning strengths and potential for success. So you're going to look in there and they're like, yeah, they can do 3-step commands. Oh, wonderful. Then I know I can teach them in groups or in multiple step aspects. They can learn in groups of 3. They can do X, Y, or Z. And it shows me this is what I need to use to help overcome some of the barriers. Again, from the Vineland, we're trying to deduct these things from the information it gives us. The VB-MAPP just says, here you go. This is all the information you need to be a successful clinician. That's why I like the VB-MAPP. Okay. So again, this can all be done through an interview with the parents. All of these, the EESA needs to be done one-on-one with the kid, but the transitions and barriers and the first assessment of the VB-MAPP can all be done with the parent or caregiver, whomever it is you are assessing. You can ask them all the questions. And again, same thing, if you're getting a whole bunch of negatories, you don't have to proceed. You can just run the VB-MAPP as itself without the ESA or the barriers or the transitions, but I wouldn't. You're missing out on half the thing. I mean, you can drive a car without a radio in it, but it'd be boring. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. It does take more time, but the information it gives you is invaluable. Okay? It tells you everything on how to really program. Again, you can use it as a curriculum, and then you program for the things that are keeping them from learning. Any questions thus far on the VB-MAPP? Okay, next slide. Transitions assessment. You can see it looks just like the other ones. In general, if the child is scoring 0 to 2, they may need some help. As 4 to 5 means they probably don't need intensive services and can learn in a group classroom setting. Kind of lays it out there for you. This is the tool that Sundberg developed for schools and their IEPs. It is nice. I don't know any schools that use it. Does your school use it?
No, I've been trying.
Yeah, I know a lot of
Particularly in
BCBAs.
one classroom I've been
Yeah,
trying.
it'd be
but
so effective. And it saves time, but it is a learning curve, which is sometimes a hindrance. Okay. There is also the task analysis. So this is a supplementary tool that I have not used a lot, I'll admit. So what this does is it breaks down 900 skills into step-by-steps. So it's a great curriculum tool. It can be used as a curriculum guide. It's not really required. So as a time efficiency aspect, I haven't run it a lot. And there's also 900 skills. So and you don't have to assess them on all 900 skills. It's just a guide for you to be able to have a pre-made task analysis on different things. Or if there's certain skills that they're not doing well, you can break it down and see where in the steps they're faulting, which is an effective tool. Next slide. Okay, 3 levels. I should have put this slide earlier. I'm sorry. So level 1, this is how to program for it. Early learner remember there's 3 tiers in the VB-MAPP, the original assessment, the first assessment. If your child is all within level 1, they're an early learner. That means they're pretty impacted by their disability, whatever it may be. You're going to need more intensive strategies, probably some very structured, intensive teaching tools. DTT may be a good one. I know that's sometimes a swear word to some people, but for our early learners, man, it's an effective tool. I don't use it a ton, except for with my really low functioning learners. And then I get out of DT as fast as I can. But to get the learning going, DTT is great. It really is, discrete trial training. We're really focusing on the acquisition of skills. That's our core. We're just learning. We're learning how to learn. We're trying to get the intensivity down. We're trying to go from 100 trials to 50 trials in acquisition rates. If they're in the level 2, they're in an earlier to moderate range learner. Okay, that means I can start pulling back on the intensivity of my teaching strategies. I wouldn't pull back on the amount of hours and services that I'm providing. I would just start using different teaching strategies. Start throwing some NET in there. Start throwing some conditional discrimination training in there. Start throwing in some of these other less intensive aspects that we can utilize. They're starting to show some signs of language acquisition. They're also starting to show a little bit of generalization, and we're now taking those skills and expanding them further from the foundational aspects, the foundational skills. So we're going from 1-word mans to 3-word mans. We're going from 1-word answers to 4-word answers, kind of things along those lines. And then level 3 is your really good, remember this only goes up to 4 years of age, but that's your advanced learner where they have a strong foundation of skills, and we're really focusing on generalization. And I'm mainly using natural environment teaching because I'm trying to mimic how they will be learning from their natural environment without me in their lives. Okay. So that's how I look at choosing teaching strategies, but also for my programming. I have a lot of strict, structured goals for my level 1ers and a lot more loose curriculum for my level 3s. There's no 3 right there. I apologize. This is a bad thing. There's just this random frequency right there. Just point out all those for you.
Is this your recommendations or is this part of the VB-MAPP?
This is part of the VB-MAPP. This actually came from that. Yep. The teaching strategies did not. Discrete trial was not recommended in there. It wasn't told not to use it, but that was fine. Just because I'm a fan of discrete trial with my early learners. But again, I try to get out of it as soon as I can. But for teaching pre-academic skills and for teaching some basic feature function class or some COEX, it really is a great tool. Questions on this? All right, next slide, good sir. All right, VB-MAPP, pretty intense, right? But pretty awesome. Gives you a lot of information. It's going to take you probably about as long as your Vineland. It's going to be dependent upon the skill sets of your child. But it gives you so much more focused data than the Vineland does. The Vineland gives you a broad perspective of the skill sets of your client. The VB-MAPP gives you some concentrated data on how to really intervene in this case. Questions, comments, concerns? Clear as mud? Okay, so do we want to head straight into the ables or do we need another break? Talk to me. I know it's really cold in here, so I appreciate you guys all. Just kidding.